Hey guys, it's the old millennial here, and today we're going to do the third and final installment on immigration and tackle the subject of what I would do with the folks who are already here illegally. Now, this is probably one of the touchiest subjects on the immigration debate because you have millions of people here illegally, and the question of what to do is pretty controversial. And I'm going to try and tackle this from a pragmatic point of view because I know, many of the folks on the right would say, hey, they broke the law, let's deport them. Many of the folks that I know on the left would say, hey, they're here, they've been here forever, let's just give them amnesty, and be done with it. And I'm going to kind of fall a little bit in the middle here because while I do think that figuring out this so-called path to citizenship is something that probably makes the most sense, I also don't want to make it just a blanket, absolution of the fact that they actually did break the law. Now, guys, I am not a professional policymaker, but I do fancy myself a political enthusiast, so I have thought a lot about it. So, without further ado, here's the plan. The first point that I want to make is that I would not deport the folks who are here illegally, and that is just as much for pragmatic reasons as the so-called moral argument. The cost of deporting all of the folks who would be here illegally would just be astronomical, and frankly, it's something that we shouldn't even consider doing just because of it, taking aside any of the more moral arguments as to whether or not we should. So, right off the bat, I would say that kind of a blanket deportation in my plan would be off the table. What I would do, though, is institute a formalized guest worker program and give folks who are here illegally basically first pick on joining this program. So for jobs that were seasonal, things, especially on the agricultural front, people would be allowed to come into this country to be able to be hired by, folks looking for this service. And then at the end of that season to leave after being paid a fair wage that would be falling in line with minimum wage or greater for that given state, and be able to go back home and visit their families. Now, this, I think, could be something that's frankly appealing to a lot of the people that are here illegally because they're here for a better opportunity. They're here to be able to afford enough money to actually be able to send back home so that they can support their families who are, in one of various countries. And so the idea of being able to earn that money legally and then be able to go back and see their families could have a fair amount of appeal. For the folks who did not want to take, part of this guest worker program, I would institute a probationary period that would be at least 2 years long where people who are here illegally could essentially say, here I am, I have been here illegally, and I want to start my probationary period. Again, I would say that would be at least 2 years long and have that be seniority based. So if you could prove that you've been here for 10 years or longer, or 20 years or longer, 30 years or longer, you would get to the front of the line, and that every year, after those 2 years, people who were at that front of the line would then be eligible to get visas. During this probationary period, you wouldn't have a lot of the benefits that you would get if you were a permanent resident or a citizen. So you wouldn't get things like access to in-state tuition or access to free college or anything like that, because I think that, look, if you broke the law, I get why you came here, I sympathize with your plight, but you should be willing to wait, and you should be willing to go through some type of reparation, to prove that, hey, I want to be in this country, I want to do it the right way, there just wasn't a great, system for me to do that before. And so I think you should have to wait, I think you should have to earn it. And I think a lot of the benefits that we see as, citizens or as permanent residents should not be available to people on this probationary period. I mentioned that seniority should put you at the top of the line. However, I also think that you need to pay a tax penalty based on that seniority. So if you've been here for longer and have avoided paying taxes during that time, yes, you should be at the front of the line because you've proven that you've been able to contribute and survive in the society. But you also owe a greater debt to that society. So you need to be able to pay off, some type of penalty tax that is amortized based on the time that you've been here. And it doesn't have to be all at once. I get a lot of these folks don't have a ton of money, and this is something that, can be done over time. But again, I don't want to make it so that it's a clean and easy thing that we're rewarding people for the fact that they broke the law to get in here. I sympathize with the plight, but I do think there needs to be a payment for the fact that you broke the rules. Thirdly, during this probationary period, if you commit any felony or any violent misdemeanor, you need to be out. Like, you need to be removed and deported and be gone. Again, you have broken the laws to get in here. There should be a zero tolerance policy if you're breaking other laws while you are already here on this probationary period. I'm all for deporting people who have committed felonies and violent misdemeanors to be deported as a matter of course before anything was implemented, because if you're coming in and committing crimes, you are not the type of person that we want to have living in this country, and you're already here illegally, so you just need to not be here. Now, this probationary period is contingent on the fact that I think that we really need to secure the border. So it won't work if we give a general amnesty and then keep a porous border, because then you're just going to have a larger group of people who came here illegally to essentially take advantage of the probation program. So there does also need to be a cutoff. So once this thing was instituted, basically, if you can't prove that you were here before that cutoff, you would not be eligible for this probationary period, because we cannot keep incentivizing people to come here illegally and just perpetuate the problem. I do think that we probably need to make it easier to come here legally, and something like that guest worker program could facilitate that and help make that better. So those are my proposed solutions. Let me know what you guys think. I know this is a really complicated problem, and I'm probably missing some things. I would love to hear some feedback from you guys. And if you enjoy the video, please subscribe to the channel. Would love to have you. And until next time, I will talk to you soon.